She discovered her fiancé's confession minutes before the wedding, and her revenge shocked everyone. This story took place in New York, on one of those mornings that seems perfect. Clear skies, impeccable flowers, and a future designed to last forever. But the truth is, love is sometimes a play where not everyone memorizes the same script. As guests laughed, snapped photos, and toasted what felt like a modern-day fairy tale, something about to happen would transform that altar into a stage for revelation. What would you do if moments before saying "I do," you discovered the person next to you was hiding a lie? Would you continue the show, or change the ending in front of everyone? Today, you'll learn the story of Emily, a woman who, in just a few minutes, went from dream to shock and had the whole world talking about what happened. So subscribe to the channel and comment here, what would you do in her place? Because what comes next will touch your heart. Emily Parker always believed that true love happened only once in a lifetime. And when she met Richard Coleman, a charismatic architect with a calm gaze and an easy smile, she thought she had finally found her destiny. They met in a cafe in the heart of Manhattan on a crisp autumn morning, when the golden leaves danced in the air as if celebrating the beginning of something great. The connection was immediate. Conversations became long. Walks through Central Park felt like scenes from a romantic movie, and every photo posted online showed what everyone called New York's perfect couple. Friends envied, family members were moved, and even strangers commented on the photos. These two were made for each other, but too much perfection always comes at a price. The narrator of life rarely writes stories without twists and turns, and though Emily gave herself body and soul, there was something about Richard that never fully revealed itself. A silent part, an elegant mystery, which she mistook for shyness, but was, in fact, distance. He spoke little about the past, dodged simple questions, and seemed to build an invisible wall between them, as if afraid that love would discover who he truly was. Still, Emily believed, because those who love sometimes prefer to close their eyes and keep the dream alive, even when reality has already begun to dim the lights. In the late afternoons, they walked down Fifth Avenue, planning their wedding, their dream home, and the bright future they imagined they would share. But between every laugh and toast, there was a subtle echo, a silence that clashed with the happiness everyone saw. It was like a soundtrack too beautiful for a film that hid a tragic plot. Richard always seemed too busy, always tense, always with something to solve. And Emily, naive in her hope, thought it was just the weight of an ambitious man's responsibilities. She didn't realize that, while she dreamed of the white dress, fate was already sowing the first threads of disillusionment. The truth is that love blinds, but silence screams, and she hadn't yet learned to listen to the sound of her own intuition. On the eve of the wedding, everything seemed perfect. Invitations sent, flowers chosen, promises made. But behind that magazine-worthy setting, there was a secret waiting to be revealed. A secret that, when revealed, would transform the altar into a stage, and the bride into the protagonist of a story no one would forget. The days leading up to Emily and Richard's wedding seemed like something out of a dream catalogue. Everything was perfectly planned. The custom-designed dress, the ceremony at a historic Manhattan church, and a lavish reception overlooking the Hudson. But sometimes, the calm before the party is just a mask for the approaching storm. Behind the scenes of happiness, small cracks began to appear. Phone calls ended abruptly, messages were deleted. Mood swings Emily tried to explain away with the stress of preparations. She told herself it was normal, that all couples go through phases of tension before the big day. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "Something's not right." One Tuesday afternoon, she walked into the room and found him hurriedly turning off his cell phone, as if trying to hide a secret. Richard smiled, feigning casualness, and said he was just a client. Emily wanted to believe him, and she did. Because when you love, the heart is often the most convincing advocate against the lies that hurt you. Compared to a movie, Emily's life felt like a romance novel about to turn into a thriller. The soft soundtrack was starting to fade, and the protagonist no longer seemed quite so heroic. Richard no longer looked at her the same way. His hugs were quick, his kisses mechanical. His gaze was distant, as if he were talking to someone who wasn't there. One Thursday night, Emily noticed the engagement ring was no longer on his finger. When she asked why, Richard simply replied with a practiced smile, "I had it cleaned." Such a simple answer. Yet it carried such a weight that her heart felt like a stone. Friends tried to reassure her. They told her she was nervous, that it was normal to feel fear before the wedding. And maybe it was. But some fears come from instinct, and instinct doesn't lie. Over the next few days, Emily began to notice that Richard avoided talking about the future. He changed the subject, looked away, and seemed to be running away from something she didn't understand. Even their dog, Max, noticed the change. He barked whenever he arrived, something he'd never done before, yet Emily insisted that love would overcome any doubt. It was like trying to glue a broken mirror back together, believing the reflection would still be perfect. But love, when it needs too much fixing, has long since ceased to be whole. On the eve of the wedding, Emily woke with a strange feeling. The wind blew hard outside, swaying the bedroom curtains as if the universe were trying to warn her of something. She didn't know it, but that would be the last day she believed the story she had created with Richard, because that very night, a message would arrive on his cell phone, and with it, the confession that would change everything. That night, Emily was alone in her Manhattan hotel room, just minutes before getting ready for what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The city glittered outside, its illuminated skyscrapers reflecting off the dark waters of the Hudson. But inside, the room was too quiet, almost suffocating. She sat up in bed, taking deep breaths, trying to calm her heart that felt like it was beating out of her chest. Then her phone vibrated. An unexpected notification caught her attention, an anonymous voicemail. With a trembling finger, she pressed play, unaware that every second of that audio would shatter the illusion she'd built over months. Richard's voice was clear and calm, but charged with intentions Emily had never imagined. He was speaking to a friend, unaware that each word would be a direct blow to her heart. "After today, I'll have to pretend to love you to get what I want. No one can find out before the altar." Emily's world froze. The flowers in her room, the white dress hanging on the wall, even the distant noise of the city disappeared. What had been love now revealed itself as manipulation. Her mind whirled between disbelief and pain. How could someone so close to her plan something so cruel without her noticing? Tears began to fall silently onto the pillow. But amidst the crying and disbelief, a flame began to ignite within her. A flame of indignation, of courage, and of revenge. Because Emily knew she couldn't simply disappear and forget. What he had done deserved a fitting response. Amidst the storm of emotions, she paused and reflected, is love so blind that it ignores obvious signs? Or do we insist on believing in fairy tales, even when reality screams that the ending will be different? She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and made a decision that would change everything. She wouldn't call off the wedding, at least not yet. Revenge needed to be calculated, silent, perfect. Like a game of chess, every step would be meticulously planned. As the clock ticked down and the day dawned, Emily prepared for what no one, not even Richard, could have imagined. She wouldn't just be the betrayed bride. She would be the protagonist of an act that would have all of New York talking about that day. But before that, what would she do next? That's something only the minutes before the wedding could reveal. Emily took a deep breath and with a clear mind began to plot each step. There would be no shouting, no gratuitous scandal. Her revenge would be silent, perfect, worthy of a soap opera protagonist. Every gesture, every look, and every word would need to be calculated, like pieces on a chessboard, waiting for the exact moment to reveal the whole truth. She surveyed the room, as if studying a set before entering. The white dress hung on the hanger, impeccable, reflecting an image of perfection that contrasted with the whirlwind of emotions boiling inside her. Emily knew the world outside awaited the fairy tale wedding, but within her, the certainty grew that nothing would ever be the same again. In the days leading up to it, she had rehearsed every reaction, every smile, every gesture that no one could associate with the pain she felt. She would be the charming bride everyone had been waiting for, but beneath the surface, a silent plan was brewing. She would turn Richard's betrayal into a spectacle of subtle justice, showing the world and himself that no one plays with feelings without consequences. While Richard was still preparing for his big day, oblivious to what was approaching, Emily mentally reviewed the perfect sequence: the ceremony, the vows, the recording that would reveal her true colors. Every detail was thought out so that, when the moment arrived, the surprise would be total. The shock would be inevitable, the repercussions enormous, and the lesson clear. Those who lie to others' hearts pay a price they never imagined. Silently, she smiled at her reflection in the mirror. It was a calm smile, but filled with determination. There was no impulsive anger, just the strategic patience of someone who understands that the most effective revenge is the one that leaves everyone breathless, without immediately understanding the extent of what is about to happen. Emily didn't need to say anything yet. The world seemed oblivious to what was about to happen, and that was exactly how it should be. Every detail, from the placement of the flowers to the music playing in the church, was aligned to create maximum surprise. As the minutes ticked by, the tension grew. New York City continued its routine outside, oblivious to the drama unfolding inside that hotel room. But there, in Emily's heart, the future was already decided. And when the time came, no one would emerge from that ceremony unscathed. The big day arrived. Manhattan woke up under a clear sky, with rays of sunlight filtering through the skyscrapers, reflecting on the golden facade of the church where everything would take place. The impeccably dressed guests commented on how stunning Emily looked and how Richard seemed like the perfect groom. But not all the smiles were genuine. Some hid small doubts, small inklings of what was about to happen. Emily walked in, elegant, as if walking down a red carpet in a movie. Her white dress flowed with each step, the veil falling delicately over her shoulders as admiring eyes turned to her. On the outside, calm and graceful. Inside, every beat of her heart carried the weight of the betrayal she had just discovered. Every step was measured, every gesture prepared for the moment when the world would see her truth. Richard stood at the altar, motionless, confident. He believed everything was under control, that no one would suspect a thing. But Emily's gaze was different, a mix of serenity and intensity, something none of his friends had ever seen. It was the calm before the storm, the harbinger that this fairy tale wedding was about to turn into an unforgettable drama. As the ceremony progressed, every word, every smile, every gesture became charged with tension. Soft piano music filled the church, but for Emily, every note seemed to signal that time was running out. She remembered every moment of their relationship, the little lies, the signs she ignored, and she knew it was time to turn the disappointment into something visible, something no one could ignore. When the priest asked if anyone had anything to say against the union, a heavy silence fell over the church. The guests held their breath, thinking it was just a formality of the ritual. But Emily, her voice firm and controlled, stepped forward. The world seemed to slow down, and Richard's expression shifted from confidence to surprise to suppressed panic. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She simply began speaking with calculated calm. As eyes turned to her, every word was chosen, every pause charged with intention. The next few minutes would be eternal, a sequence everyone in the church would never forget. What she was about to reveal would change not only that day, but everyone's perception of Richard and the very idea of perfection in love. The tension was at its peak. Every guest, every friend, every family member felt the weight of what was about to happen. The church walls seemed to close in on the truth waiting to be revealed. and Emily knew her actions were about to transform what would have been a dream wedding into a spectacle of shock and upheaval. Silence fell over the church. Every eye turned to Emily. Every breath seemed to be heard, and Richard felt for the first time as if he were no longer in control. She held the microphone tightly, but the calmness of her voice contrasted with the earthquake she was about to unleash. "Before I say yes," she began, every word filled with determination, "I think everyone should hear what my fiancé really thinks about this wedding." The whisper echoed through the room. Some guests exchanged confused glances. Others tried to figure out if this was part of the ceremony or if Emily had lost her mind. Then, with a slow gesture, she pressed the play button on her phone. Richard's voice echoed across the altar, clear, cold, and merciless. He spoke to a friend, unaware that every word would be heard by everyone. "After today, I'll have to pretend to love you to get what I want." No one can find out before the altar. The impact was immediate. Some guests covered their mouths in shock. Others whispered in disbelief. Richard stood frozen, his eyes wide, as if each syllable were a blade slicing through his confidence. Even the priest seemed unable to continue the ceremony. What had been a perfect union was crumbling before everyone's eyes. Emily smiled slightly, not with happiness, but with triumph. She had waited patiently, calculated every detail, and now the truth was irrefutably exposed. There was no escape for Richard, no excuses, no turning back. The revenge she had so carefully planned was unfolding before friends, family, and surprised witnesses. She then handed the bouquet to her mother, a silent gesture that the chapter was closed. No shouting, no excessive tears, just the dignity of someone who refuses to be a victim. Emily turned and walked out of the church, leaving behind not only a cheating groom, but also what everyone believed to be the couple's perfection. As New York City continued its rhythm, the repercussions were instantaneous. The recording spread, comments poured in, and social media was abuzz. Some called Emily a hero, others vengeful, but all recognized her courage in transforming disappointment into a memorable action. And in Emily's heart, there was a unique feeling: justice, clarity, and freedom. What had been love had become a learning experience, and every step she took in the ceremony was proof that no one, not even the groom, could toy with her feelings with impunity. His eyes lifted to the street, gazing at the blue Manhattan sky. It was the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a new life, stronger, more aware, and completely free from the weight of a lie that no longer existed. The day after the wedding was marked by headlines, photos and videos that quickly spread throughout New York. Richard's recording circulated on social media, sparking mixed opinions. Some praised Emily for her courage and determination. Others criticized her for turning an intimate moment into a public spectacle. But for her, it didn't matter. Justice, silent and precise, had already been served. She received messages from friends, family, and even strangers, all divided between support and shock. Some commented that they had never seen anyone react with such dignity and firmness. Others thought her attitude was excessive. Emily realized then that the world will always have opinions, but what matters is how we feel about ourselves. Meanwhile, Richard disappeared from the public eye. His friends and family couldn't believe he'd been exposed so blatantly. For many, the seemingly perfect, confident man had become nothing more than a memory of a well-rehearsed lie. Emily, for her part, decided to step away from the media and social media. She needed time to rebuild her life, reflect on what had happened, and most importantly, learn to trust again. She moved to a smaller but cozy apartment, where every detail reflected her new phase, independent, confident, and aware of her own worth. The rebuilding process wasn't quick, but each step was a victory. She resumed old hobbies, reconnected with forgotten friends, and gradually learned to love herself completely without depending on anyone's approval. Richard's betrayal, which had previously seemed an unbearable burden, became a catalyst for personal growth. Emily also realized she wasn't alone. Honest conversations with friends and family helped her see that life could be rebuilt, even after profound disappointment. Every piece of advice, every hug, every word of support served as bricks, rebuilding an emotional fortress that no one could shake. New York, which had previously witnessed the shock of revelation, now became the setting for Emily's recovery. Walking the city streets, feeling the wind on her face, seeing the lights reflecting on the Hudson River, all of this reminded her that even after a storm, the sun always shines again. And so, Emily discovered that life goes on, even when the love we believed eternal fades. Pain turned into learning, disappointment into strength, and the past, though significant, did not define her future. She was ready to write new chapters, free of lies, filled with truth and the courage to begin again. Looking back, Emily realized that that day in Manhattan wasn't just about a cancelled wedding or a revealed betrayal. It was about dignity, courage, and the ability to transform pain into learning. Life often presents us with people who don't live up to our love. But every disappointment carries with it a lesson we need to learn. It's not about revenge for the pleasure of others' pain, but about reclaiming one's own worth. Emily showed that it's possible to fight back without losing one's composure, that true strength lies in remaining calm while the truth unfolds. The city that never sleeps witnessed the shattering of a fairy tale, but also the emergence of a woman who refuses to be defined by the mistakes of others. Like a mirror, Emily's story reflects something we should all remember. When someone fakes love, self-honesty is the most powerful weapon. And when we allow ourselves to react with intelligence and clarity, even the most intense pain can become a springboard to new paths. New York, with its incessant pace and brightly lit streets, became the setting for a learning experience that goes far beyond a wedding ceremony. It was a reminder that every choice, every reaction, can transform a moment of betrayal into an opportunity for growth and freedom. If this story touched you, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments what you would do in Emily's shoes. Every reaction, every opinion is part of the conversation about courage, dignity, and how we cope with disappointment. And remember, sometimes the end of a chapter isn't the end of the story, but just the beginning of a stronger version of yourself. Stay tuned, because in the next stories, you'll see that not every love ends the way we expect, and some surprises are even more shocking than this one.